We are very pleased to have Shri Yasodanandаны Das here. He has come from Los Angeles. He's one of the very senior devotees of our movement. And we are happy to have you here, Prabhu, to have a short conversation on various aspects of history of ISKCON and what's happening in ISKCON and a few things like that. Before we go into those issues, I would like to have a little background about you. When you came in touch with Krishna consciousness, which year was that, where was that, and how you met Srila Prabhupada, if you can briefly say some of those things.
I first saw Srila Prabhupada in the summer of 1967. I was in Montreal at an international exposition called Montreal Expo 67. And I was there with my parents, and we came close to the India Pavilion, which was an exposition by the government of India. And Prabhupada was there chanting Hare Krishna with some of his disciples, 6, 7 disciples. So I was there with my parents, and I stopped, and I found this very fascinating. The kirtan was there. So my parents, they were trying to pull me away, and I kept escaping, and I kept coming back to the kirtan. I found Prabhupada's kirtan was fascinating, very attractive. Of course, I didn't understand much. So twice I escaped from my parents and came back. So I was able to first see Prabhupada doing the kirtan. He was chanting, smiling very blissfully, and the devotees would respond. So after that, the next week, when I went back from Montreal to Quebec City, a few hundred miles away, I saw in the local newspaper, Prabhupada's picture appeared with the same devotees chanting. It was a very nice, large spread in the weekend magazine with Prabhupada in picture in color chanting Hare Krishna with the disciple, exactly like I had seen the week before. So I took that picture out and put it on the wall, because at that time I was practicing a little yoga and things like that, not quite understanding very clearly.
How old were you at that time?
When I first met Prabhupada, I was 14. So for about 2 years, a few years, I had been practicing yoga since I was 13, and I had kept a picture of Maharishi Yogi and Mahatma Gandhi. At one point, I had found a picture of Lord Chaitanya. I put it on the wall. I had no idea who he was. I thought he looked very nice. He was dancing, long hair, and nice dhoti. I thought, this is very nice. Let me put it on. I had no idea who he was, what the name was, from some Indian book. So then I used to practice yoga and offer a little incense. I did not know. So I offered to Prabhupada, Maharishi Yogi, everybody. I had no idea. So then 2 years later, I was in the park in the summer in 1969 in Quebec City. And one person came here. He had long hair and long, long robes, and he was in the park chanting Hare Krishna. And I'd remember, oh, this is like the Swami that I'd seen. So after the kirtan, I went to speak with this person. I asked him, oh, how did you learn this chanting? He says, oh, I learned this from the Swamiji. So this person, this devotee, had spent just 3 minutes with Prabhupada his whole life. And Prabhupada gave him 3 instructions. He says, chant Hare Krishna, read from Bhagavad Gita, and if you have the chance, give people a little bit of prasad. So he would go in the park, he would have kirtan, chant Hare Krishna, he would read briefly from Bhagavad Gita, then he would distribute some fruit prasad or some little prasad that he would make. And he would get 40, 50, sometimes 65 people all chanting like that. So that's the first time I saw this devotee chanting. So after chanting with him, then I went to talk to him. And he explained to me, he was starting to show me the Bhagavad Gita, and he showed me the chanting. He left me some beads. He showed me how to chant on the japa beads. And he says, Swamiji, Prabhupada was named Swamiji in the beginning. Until 1969, everybody used to call Prabhupada Swamiji. So Swamiji is shown, you chant on beads every day. So he gave me a set of beads and chanting, so I started to chant. And then, because at that point I knew mostly French. So he said, if you want more, maybe you should go to Montreal and meet the Swamiji. I said, okay. So 15 days later, because this was summer break from school in 1969, I decided I'm going to go try to meet the Swamiji. So I went, I hitchhiked from Quebec to Montreal, and I went to the temple, and I came there, and I saw the same Bhagavad Gita that this person, this devotee, was reading from. I said, oh, I really need to get this book. So I had a little bit of money. I bought the Bhagavad Gita with Prabhupada's commentary. So I went back. I was staying with some friends. I went back that night and stayed up the whole night and read Bhagavad Gita. And all the kind of questions I'd been wanting to hear for years and years were answered. Everything. Because when I was 13 years old, I had French, in addition of the Vedas in French, there was one Sanskrit academy in Paris, France. They had translated the 4 Vedas in French. So I was reading the Vedas, but I could not understand anything, unless you hear from authorized bona fide person. So I'm reading about Vayu, Indra, Shiva, Brahma, but no clear understanding could be there. When I read that night the entire Bhagavad Gita, and everything was very clear. Prabhupada's books was such a great impression. Because when I came to the temple, I said, can I meet Swamiji? See, well, Swamiji is not here. The devotees, they said, Swamiji is not here. He's gone to Europe. He's gone to some other place. He's traveling. But we have his book here. Oh, you have his book. So I got the Bhagavad Gita, read that night. And all these questions for years and years I was trying to find answer. What is life? Who am I? What happens after death? Where do we come from? Why some living entities suffer? Is there anything in the planets outside? Is there a heaven, hell, spiritual world, kingdom of God? All these questions systematically answered in Prabhupada's books, first night. So the next day I said, I want to get a dhoti and put this mark, this tilak. They said, well, you can only do this if you're a devotee. I said, I'll become a devotee. So the next day, I request you shave me, I become a devotee. So this was in the summer of 1969, early summer.
When did you get initiated formally?
In the beginning, when I was in the Montreal temple in devotee, in the beginning, there were only a few French devotees. Most of the devotees were English-speaking devotees. There was one French devotee, Dayal Nitai. And he was telling devotees that he wanted to go again become a Christian priest. So he was waiting there till another French-speaking person would come, that he could. So I came there, and they trained me, and they discussed, because you speak French, we'd like to give you, radio interviews, newspaper interviews, and newspaper writing, and television interviews, so we want to get you initiated. But I did not meet Prabhupada. I was just reading Bhagavad Gita every day, doing a little service, kirtan, and trying to preach in French. So then in the summer of 1969, in August 11th, they brought me to New York, and they got me initiated by Prabhupada. Prabhupada was physically there. At that time, another devotee named Bhima, and Gadadhar Das, and Kurukshetra, they were also initiated on that day. So Prabhupada was there. It was a very powerful impression to see Shrila Prabhupada live. I had never seen him. I had heard about him, because this was Swamiji. So it was like very, very transcendental surcharge.
That was in 26 2nd Avenue?
Yes, that was the temple in 26 2nd Avenue. And the night before the initiation, there was a Maha Samkirtan where literally maybe 150 devotees all went out in the streets of New York. We were distributing back-to-guided magazines, big kirtan, and passing cards to invite people to the Sunday feast and the program.
Now let's come to August, September, October, November of 1977. At that time, where were you? What were you doing? What was your service?
At that time, I was basically in Vrindavan, in the Krishna Balaram temple, because in 1976, after I came back from South India preaching, I was at one time chanting the Brahma Samhita close to the Didi room. So one of the Gurukul teachers was dispatched by Prabhupada as bring that person who is chanting. Who is chanting this Brahma Samhita there? So this one Rupa Vilas was a teacher at the time. He brought me, he says, Prabhupada wants to see you. So I thought, oh, Prabhupada is going to chastise me or correct me. He says, okay, I come. And he asked me, were you the one chanting? I said, yes, Prabhupada. He says, oh, that is very nice. So now you kindly stay here and train these children, the Gurukul children, to chant like that. And also sometimes he mentioned you can go back South India to preach, but make your main service the teaching in the Gurukul. So in the summer of 1976, late summer, Prabhupada requested that I stay in a Gurukul. And he also knew I had preached in South India. He said sometimes you can also go preach. So by 1977, at that time, in May of 1977, Prabhupada had come from Rishikesh. His health was declining, and he came there to Vrindavan. On May 17th he came, and we received him, we washed his feet, all of us received him, and he gave us the sad news that he may depart at any time. He was coming to Vrindavan to die. Then he says, there's nothing to lament, I will always be with you through my books. But still, we felt great sadness that Prabhupada was announcing this. So for the next 10, 11 days, Prabhupada requested the GBC to come to Vrindavan. They all came and asked him so many questions about the management of ISKCON, his will, his properties, and so many things. And then in October of 1977, because at that time in the Gurukul building was still under construction. And some dispute arose with the contractor. The contractor that was building the physical building wanted too much money for something. So there was some litigation that was starting. So at that time, Akshayananda Swami and Gopal Krishna Swami, they requested that we should try to settle this problem. So they requested Guru Kripa and myself to go back to Japan so we could collect the necessary funds to arrange to settle the litigation and put this problem to rest. So we went to Prabhupada in the middle of October and asked him what we should do, and he says, yes, you go there, take care of everything, you have my blessing. So that was the last time that I physically saw Srila Prabhupada at that time, in middle of October 1977. By the time Srila Prabhupada departed on the 14th of November 1977, we were in Tokyo, Japan. And the next day we got a call that His Divine Grace had departed. And they told us if you can try to come as soon as possible. But some way or other we were not able to get tickets immediately. So we waited a little bit, a few weeks. And we kept calling Vrindavan every day to get the news what was happening. So this, in a nutshell, is basically where I was at the time.
As it was understood by devotees soon after Srila Prabhupada left this world, what was the arrangement that Srila Prabhupada had made for initiation? What was the understanding among devotees? Was there confusion, or it was clear, or how was the mood? Whether it was in Tokyo, where you were there, or when you came back to Vrindavan after a few weeks, you said, what was the understanding?
Well, it depends who you speak to. I mean, right now we're speaking in 2009. So now the perception of many devotees is often colored by their different situation. Okay. At that time, my understanding was that Prabhupada had made arrangements for initiation through the via medium of officiating representative. That was my personal understanding. Okay. But it was quite obvious a few months later, after November 14th, 1977, that our GBC godbrothers had a different understanding. I'm referring to the first March 1978 GBC meeting at Mayapur, West Bengal, India, which they first announced their position, their philosophical position regarding initiation following Srila Prabhupada's departure. Now, as you obviously heard earlier from Dhamma, the original written instruction of Srila Prabhupada that he had given in July of 1977, although Prabhupada had instructed that this should be disseminated or distributed throughout all the temples, because we have spoken to many devotees who were there physically at the time in different parts of the world, not everybody heard that instruction. And it's also important that while there was an official society position or official position of our movement regarding this, it was not put in writing until March of 1978. Between November 14th, 1977 and the actual Purnima day of March 1978, there was no official position in ISKCON. Okay. Now, I know that now many people seem to be under the impression that everything was available for discussion and all the transcripts. There was no such thing. There were no transcripts of conversation available. There were no so-called tapes available. The only thing that had been distributed was one letter, the July 9th letter, to a few temple presidents, but none of the other important evidence, namely all the transcripts of the conversations, so many letters of Prabhupada, which are very essential to understand the entire context of Srila Prabhupada's desire, were not available. Okay. I was in Tokyo at that time until the end of December. When I came back to Vrindavan at the end of December 1977, we had a conversation at that time with the secretary, Prabhupada's secretary. And I do recall at that time we asked the secretary, how will these initiations and these ritvik representatives, how will this function? His reply, he hesitated, would not look at me, and he said, oh, this we will have to discuss at Mayapur. In other words, whether or not they had a clear idea of what they were going to do or intended to do, that is them. But no clear explanation was there between November 14th, 1977 and the actual Purnima day of 1977.
1978.
Yeah, 78.
When did you hear about the zonal acharya system, and where were you and what were you doing at that time?
The zonal acharya system did not develop just immediately. That came after the Mayapur festival.
Right. After the march.
Because during Prabhupada's manifested presence, for the lack of a better words, all the different GBCs, by the time of Prabhupada's departure, there were 23 GBCs. All of them every year would have a certain geographical area that amongst themselves the GBC would discuss, and they would present to Prabhupada, here's the different assignments for the different zones with the different GBCs, and Prabhupada would approve.
Okay.
Okay. At 1978, then the issue came up, what will be the situation with those people that were designated by Prabhupada to initiate, to carry on this function of initiation within ISKCON.
Right.
The zonal assignments for all these different GBCs were still there. But after March, when all of them went back to their zones, then some way or other they made mutual arrangements to all of them have an exclusive zone or geographical area where they will be the exclusive controller or dominant person in that zone, that area. Now, in all fairness, during Prabhupada's time, sometimes he would have certain individuals preach in certain zones or geographic areas for a considerable period of time for stability, for sake of proper public relations, for sake of preaching development. So it is not entirely false to say that Prabhupada did encourage certain people to stay in certain areas without having a musical chair type of arrangement. What Prabhupada did not establish is a permanent, unending, some kind of a kingdom type mentality, a permanent zonal control system. That was not established by Prabhupada, because the term zonal acharya is a contradiction. There's no such thing as, Prabhupada has never used the term anywhere in his writing of a zonal acharya or a zonal guru. That's a contradiction in itself.
Okay.
Because ultimately the question comes, before you can even talk about who is a zonal or this or that, how did they become acharyas in the first place? That's the first issue. Because the history of this is sometimes misunderstood by certain individuals, that it was just a mistake of a little technical mistake of a zonal acharya mistake. But when we study the issue in depth, it was not just a mistake of zonal acharya. That was a mistake. The biggest mistake was for them to think in the first place that they'd appointed as acharyas in the first place. That is the first point. That was the first misconception and falsehood.
Right.
Because there is no record. Srila Prabhupada mentioned in 1969 in a letter to one of his godbrothers, says, there is no record, we have no record of our Guru Maharaj nominating any acharya after him, unquote. This is from a Srila Prabhupada letter in 1969. And all Prabhupada's disciples, at least those who have read his books, or anyone, can see in his Chaitanya Charitamrita purports in Adilila, he criticized his contemporaries and colleagues in his spiritual master's institution for the idea of acharya appointment. And there are so many references to this For example, in April of 1974, in a famous Prabhupada letter to Rupanuga Prabhu, where he mentions about what was the cause of the breakdown of the unity of his Guru Maharaj's institution, the Gaudiya Math. And Prabhupada said they unauthorizedly selected one man to be the Acharya. That proved to be a failure. And Prabhupada warned, we shall not make the same mistake in our ISKCON camp. So when we take into account all of these statements by Prabhupada in his books, in his letters, in his conversations about this specific issue of Acharya appointment with regards to his Guru Maharaj's institution, the Gaudiya Math, then what makes us think that Prabhupada would go and contradict himself and appoint one Acharya or several Acharyas or Diksha Gurus for ISKCON? That is a contradiction. Because what we saw in ISKCON soon after Mayapur 1977, with their first report, they came out with this idea that these 11 had been selected or appointed as 11 initiating spiritual masters or Acharyas or Diksha Gurus. But no one at this meeting in Mayapur ever produced any factual record when this appointment ever took place, or this selection.
Probably nobody even asked it.
No, because the point is very few people understand this. Now there's a full-blown ongoing controversy. Right. This has been going on for many years. But everyone was aware. Everyone was aware in ISKCON that Prabhupada had requested, he wanted all of his disciples to cooperate, not to fight amongst yourselves. I was in Prabhupada's room one day when Prabhupada told his secretary, please do not turn my institution like the Catholic Church or the Gaudiya Math. He did not want it to be a mundane, materialistic institution, simply a business. Prabhupada many times did so many warnings about his institution being potentially affected. For example, in 1969, he wrote one letter, if you start to mix business motive with this Sankirtan, it will be spoiled. He warned like that. So many times there were many warnings. This is very important because in the beginning, the mentality was at the first meeting that we trust these older brothers. These are our senior brothers. They have made so many wonderful preaching accomplishments for Prabhupada. They've done so much for the mission of Prabhupada, so we respect them. Out of our love for Prabhupada, out of obedience to Prabhupada, we cooperate. There was no issue at the beginning. That was not the issue. Although no evidence was presented, we took it for granted that these brothers, these older brothers, these God brothers, were telling us the truth about what Prabhupada said. What happened later on, as the issue started to develop, and so many devotees started to bring up questions about this appointment or alleged appointment, then we started to see certain discrepancies. Because this first report that they came up with in 1978 was being advertised to be in consultation with higher authorities. This was in parenthesis under the heading, the process for carrying Srila Prabhupada's desire for future initiations in ISKCON. Then in bracket under that it says, in consultation with higher authorities. And just one day before this report, at that time I was leaving with the secretary and a few other GBCs, two of whom were part of these 11, and I asked them, I said, you know, I am associating right now and discussing with many temple presidents in ISKCON, many older devotees, many sannyasis, and many of them have many, many questions about how this process and this issue will work out. And the reply that I got from the secretary was, and I mentioned to him, I said, why don't we take all of Srila Prabhupada's conversations and get these properly transcribed so there can be an open discussion amongst all these devotees, specifically temple presidents, older devotees, sannyasis, leaders, Sankirtan leaders, so that there's a clear understanding, so that there's no issue later on that comes up. Because right now there is a lot of questions and very few answers, with all due respect to all of you. And he looked a little stunned. He said, well, we have to go and initiate. We don't have time for all these discussions. I said, that may be, but the answers are still not there. So then he says, oh, Prabhupada said that we can go to the Gaudiya Math to his godbrother, Sridhar Maharaj. And I asked him, really? Is this what Prabhupada really said? He says, oh yes, Prabhupada said we can do this. So they requested me to go to Navadvip to speak to Sridhar Maharaj. So I went there with one Bengali devotee, And I did not even finish one sentence with him. And he said, no, if they want to discuss this, they can come. That is something. If they wish to discuss this issue, they can come. I said, okay, Maharaj, very nice. Thank you very much. I went back to Mayapur. Then they discussed with him whatever they discussed.
Prabhu, you were referring to the GBC position paper in 1978 about the future of how initiation would happen. You referred to something called higher authorities.
Yes.
What did they mean?
Well, it's still unclear at this point because they've never really clarified what they meant by higher authorities. Now, there are several implications to this. Did they mean that there were higher authorities than Prabhupada? Did they mean that there were other authorities than Prabhupada? And if they put that in writing, when did Prabhupada ever tell us to go consult higher authorities? Did he ever identify those authorities? So on one hand, it's like a veiled insult against Prabhupada. Because we do know, on record, that Prabhupada in his letters specifically, and in many conversations, he had told us that everything I've given in my books, my instructions. So why they felt there is any need to go outside of those instructions? Actually, that report in itself, when it's properly analyzed, contains so many inaccuracies, misleading statements, and many apasidantas in there. But they had their own idea. It's obvious now that some of them had their own ideas that they were trying to introduce. The main theme of this paper was this falsehood that Prabhupada had appointed 11 Diksha Gurus, 11 Acharyas. Again, just like Prabhupada stated with regard to his Guru Maharaj's institution, that there's no record of our Guru Maharaj nominating any of Acharya after him. Similarly, there is no such record of Prabhupada ever appointing or selecting any Diksha Gurus or Acharyas for his institution.
For some time, sometimes we come across sannyasis saying that, no, Prabhupada told me when he gave sannyas that now you can initiate. Or after it's an etiquette that you cannot initiate now, but in future you can initiate. What do you have to say for that?
Let's see the record. They say so many things. I say, let's
that
see
was
the
a
actual
personal
record.
Conversation. That was in a personal conversation.
Oh, that's okay. But then we have, where I'm speaking of the general directive of Srila Prabhupada for his society. Whether or not Prabhupada gave any specific directive for one individual or two individuals or three individuals, that is not the issue. Because anybody can claim anything. Oh, Prabhupada talked to me in the back of the ambassador car, or Prabhupada talked to me on a walk somewhere. Because many times, some statements of Prabhupada were not recorded. Not everything he ever said was recorded. Most of it, most lectures and letters and things that were recorded. But it may be true, it may not be true. That's why my reply was, let's see the record. What was the context of the conversation? What did Prabhupada actually say? But as far as a specific directive for his society, for initiations, the only written record we have is that July 9th letter nominating 11 individual devotees, senior devotees, to act as officiating representative. If someone has another record, they could bring it, it could be produced, it could be discussed and evaluated. But so far in 33 years since Prabhupada's departure, 32 years, no one has been able to produce such a record. Because we see that soon, the first few months after March of 1978, when we were in Vrindavan, we saw some devotees who came from the West. And they came back to Vrindavan in April and May and told us that there's something happening in the society. Now we have new Vyasasanas. People are taking big puja in front of Prabhupada. Pictures are coming up on the altar. New titles, some Vishnu Pad, Acharya Pad, this Pad, that Pad are coming up. They're having this whole new system of worship that they've invented, and it's going on full blast everywhere. So we had not seen this because in Vrindavan, the GBC at the time, Guru Kripa Swami, did not allow any Vyasasanas, any pictures on the altar, none of this. He didn't allow any of this. Because he also knew that Prabhupada had not appointed any acharyas for ISKCON. No individual Diksha Gurus had ever been appointed. Whatever his view may be now, that's a different story. I do not know. But at that time, we did not have that. So when these devotees came with that, Pradyumna Das, the Sanskrit editor of Prabhupada wrote a letter to Satsvarup in which he described his objections, which were not just his personal objections, but many devotees had been discussing this, because we were starting to discuss, okay, what is it that is going on, and when did Prabhupada ever give such specific instructions that these pada titles, that these pictures on the altar, that these big titles, these simultaneous Guru Puja should go on, all these things, we had no such instruction from Prabhupada, at least in his last few months in 1977. So it was a whole new wave of introductions that were being put in the Krishna consciousness movement after March of 1978. So we objected. And then at Janmashtami in 1978, when the secretary came with another GBC from France came there, then there were some discussions, because Pradyumna was there, I was there, and we discussed. And prior to these discussions, one Gurukul teacher went to one sannyasi who was resident of Mayapur at the time, who was one of these 11, and he raised the point that so many devotees have come back from the West, from Europe and America, and they're reporting that there are so many changes in the society, changes in the method of worship, changes in the way Prabhupada is worshipped, people taking these new titles that we've never heard before. So many devotees, some of them had been kicked out, some of them have been driven away. There's so many new things coming up.
Why were they kicked out? Why were they driven away?
Because some of them had objected to the new system. They felt that Prabhupada was being minimized, that Prabhupada was being offended. Or they raised so many questions that some people could not answer. So some of them had been driven away. Then this sannyasi says, there is nothing to be discussed, we have discussed everything, they should just accept. So this Gurukul teacher went back to the same sannyasi, Mayapur-based sannyasi, and he told him, but aren't you concerned, because now we see so many disciples, they have left the mission. Some of them have been kicked out. He says, let them all leave, we've got our own disciples now, unquote. So this insensitive, crazy mentality was developing. It was starting up. Because now we could detect that this pratishta was infiltrating. This love puja pratishta, desire for name, fame, and distinction was infiltrating. All under the guise that we're following Prabhupada. Prabhupada did it, we can do it. So all because the original misconception was that because Prabhupada has designated us, has selected us to carry on this process of initiation, that means we're acharyas, that means we're appointed gurus, that means we're appointed successors. And then the mythology started. Oh, they're pure devotees, they're associates of Lord Chaitanya, they're Mahabhagavats, all of these ideas came up. And when we attempted to bring this to a certain level of sanity, Pradyumna wrote his letter. Of course, that letter also, in all fairness, at the time, we did not have transcripts of those conversations that took place in May, June, July. We were only going on the word that these people told us that Prabhupada had appointed them as acharyas for ISKCON.
The July 9th letter was known at that time?
It was known. I had seen that letter in 1977. But the July 9th letter had to be understood within the context of all these other conversations.
Okay.
Because the July 9th letter is the product of some of these conversations. It is not just an isolated letter that came down from the sky.
Okay.
Prabhupada had been mentioning on May 28, 1977, that he would nominate some representatives to carry on the process. And they asked him, is that called Ritvikacharya? Prabhupada said, yes. Then some unclear, confused questions came up. And later on, Prabhupada says, when I order, you become. Upon my order. So the next question comes up. When was the order? And there were other conversations. For example, we see that in 1980, we go back a little further in time, the secretary had a meeting in Topanga Canyon, California on the 3rd of December, 1980. Because at that time, he had been suspended along with 2 other gurus for various improprieties and things like that. And he admitted at one point that Prabhupada had been talking about this Ritvikacharya, and then 5 or 6 of us went to see him to ask him questions. So that refers to that conversation of May 28. So where is the record of Prabhupada's previous discussions of this? There obviously had to be a record. That record is nowhere to be found. So the more we started to discuss these points and these issues, and also this simultaneous Guru Puja that was going on, the more we started to see so many inconsistencies. So now we started to analyze the first theory, the first what I call methodology, that Prabhupada had appointed 11 successor gurus, 11 Diksha gurus or acharyas. When we started to question, because after this first meeting in Janmashtami, then there was another idea that came up. That was the second myth of mythology. Because as they realized that it would be very difficult to prove from the actual record when Prabhupada specifically gave the order for any of the disciples to be Diksha gurus or acharyas, then they came up, oh, everyone can become. They say according to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, everyone can become. But that is a different issue than the issue of specific appointment of 11 individuals. Everyone can become has been Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instruction for 400 years. How Srila Prabhupada chose to apply that instruction, that is up to him. That is his choice. That is his volition and his choice. So then we started to see that very few clear answers to the questions, where is the record of this? When Pradyumna had his first discussions at Janmashtami of 1978 with the secretary in Vrindavan in the Krishna Balaram guest house, the secretary kept arguing, oh, it has to be an appointed living representative that will represent Prabhupada in his temples. Pradyumna's reply says, all of Prabhupada's temple presidents, all of Prabhupada's devotees are representative. We have no such thing as an appointed living representative. Because they were trying to form some exclusive club, exclusive mentality, that we're the only ones, we're the special ones, we're the unique ones. Prabhupada had no such thing. So then, as the controversy went on, then they started to realize how we will establish this. Then they came up with a different idea. They say, okay, now Prabhupada did not appoint. Some of them obviously are also aware of Srila Prabhupada's statements. They were aware that Prabhupada had criticized this idea of acharya appointment with regards to the Gaudiya Math. So they came up with this idea, okay, the GBC is the collective acharya. We say, oh, the GBC is the collective acharya. So where did Prabhupada ever make that statement? Then they came up, oh, Prabhupada said the GBC is the ultimate managerial authority. Managerial authority may be there, but you're not the ultimate authority. The ultimate authority, spiritual authority, is Srila Prabhupada. Has always been Srila Prabhupada, will always be Srila Prabhupada. It's not that because Prabhupada departed in 1977 that his spiritual authority ceases to be. It is still there, even today. So this third myth, this third legend was being propagated. Okay, since we have very little proof for the appointment, because while simultaneously claiming that everyone can become, they were still saying that 11 had been chosen, 11 had been appointed. So you have a contradiction here. If everyone can become, then they could have let all the 5,000 disciples become Diksha Gurus, become Acharyas. But they knew you cannot run an institution like that. And also some of them knew Prabhupada had already criticized this concept in 1959. Before he left, before he started ISKCON, in his poetry at Radha Damodar temple in Vaishishtyashtakam, Prabhupada said, if everyone just initiates, as long as everyone initiates, there'll be a contradictory result. There will be failure. Because you cannot run an institution with 5,000 authorities. That doesn't work. Prabhupada designated the GBC to manage the society and representatives to carry the function of initiation on his behalf as a service to the society. But they had a different idea. So that third myth, that third legend was starting, or the GBC is the collective acharya. Then they were very angry when we suggested in February of 1979 that GBC is actually managers for the society. Because the seed of that disease, that Pratishta disease, had become very strong by that time. That now we have to get a puja. Their argument was, well, Prabhupada did it, we can do it. You see, where is the Shastra that tells us that we should not take worship in front of Prabhupada? So Pradyumna, I presented them some Vedic evidence from the 6 Goswamis. Then they say, no, this is not from Prabhupada's books. We cannot accept this. I said, you cannot accept the evidence of the 6 Goswamis as evidence. This is not good enough for you. And as we see a little bit later on, they were very busy trying to find out evidence for the 6 Goswamis, to trying to find the idea that how gurus fall down. But that is a separate topic altogether. So they were adamant that no, we carrying on, we're going to do. So this collective acharya idea was their idea, the third idea. Because they could not establish this original point. Where, when, and how did Srila Prabhupada ever appoint or select these 11 individuals as Diksha Gurus or Acharyas? 32 years, no one has been able to establish this. Every time this point is brought up, they say, oh, we have a letter in 1974, we've got this place, that place. No. When everybody assembled in front of Prabhupada in 1977 and they asked him those questions, he gave them an answer. They obviously were not happy with that answer. They were not satisfied when he told them, I shall nominate some of you as Ritvik Acharyas. Then they asked him several contradictory questions, and he told them, okay, when I order, you become Guru. When I order. The point is, when was the order? Did Prabhupada feel that the training was actually complete? Did he actually feel that these disciples, any of his disciples, not just these 11 disciples, any of these disciples were actually qualified or fully qualified to be in the capacity of Acharya Diksha Guru? If he did, why did he not directly say in his presence? Because we know from all the records that has been seen in the last 32 years that during the last few months of Srila Prabhupada's manifested presence, there is no record of Prabhupada ever making an announcement to the whole society that these 11 are my chosen successors, these 11 are the future pure devotees, these 11 are the future Diksha Gurus. There is no such record. They had to announce this after he departed. And even this so-called appointment tape was never released by Prabhupada. As a matter of fact, during Prabhupada's time, every major decision of society-wide impact for the whole of our ISKCON society was always in writing. The creation of the BBT, the whole system of sending funds to the BBT for construction of temple and future publication of books, the future management of the society with the direction of management, so many directions regarding deity worship, so many major society-wide decisions were put in writing. Prabhupada was very, very careful. He knew that you have to be very specific. He was very detailed. So this, a very important point, that Prabhupada during his manifest lifetime, he didn't appoint anyone. And this myth is still being perpetuated by people. They still do not understand. Now, they have come up with a different philosophy, another myth, that they say that Prabhupada did not appoint anyone, but Prabhupada left everything vague so that, he didn't make any specific choice. So the implication of that would be that Prabhupada left us more information of how to do a flower garland, or cook some goranga potatoes than this most important point. This is not very logical. Because we see that in 1976, in August 1976 in Bombay, Prabhupada was talking to a few of his leaders. And they were discussing what happened, why this Gaudiya Math failed. And Prabhupada says, because they tried to become more than Guru. Because Guru Maharaj, before he left, he gave so many instructions, but he did not appoint a particular man to become the next Acharya. And so many instructions are given there. So now, so many arguments are given, all counter-arguments, but the ultimate bottom line is, where is the written evidence that Prabhupada has ever made this so-called appointment? So you have so many different contradictories that have evolved over the years. And that Prabhupada was trying to prevent all these speculative theories and mythologies and legends for his movement. That's why he issued a specific letter that is clear, that is easy to understand, that would prevent the same mistake that took place 40 years earlier in his Guru Maharaj institution. He was trying to prevent that, to give some, and also trying to carry on the activities of Krishna consciousness, including initiation, in a proper way, in a systematic way. There's even this argument of living, but the Ritvik would also be living. He's not a dead person. He's not some fairy tale in the sky. So that is also there. But they did not want to accept that. That was the root of the problem.
It was interesting to hear the different alternatives that came up in the next, that you were describing. Can you once again summarize for a better understanding, Prabhu?
Yes. The first idea they had is the idea that Prabhupada appointed 11 successor acharyas, 11 Diksha gurus. Right. That was the first theory. When they were questioned with that, which they had difficulty to prove, then their reply was that everyone can become a guru, right, while simultaneously claiming still that they are appointed. The third idea that they had is some of them realized that there is a contradiction because it was very difficult to prove that Prabhupada ever appointed any successor gurus or any Diksha gurus. So they came up with this idea that Prabhupada did not appoint any gurus, but that the GBC was the collective guru. The GBC was the collective acharya. So when we tried to discuss this with them, and then asked for some proof of where is this idea that the GBC is the collective acharya, then some of them said, oh, this is in Prabhupada's will. But Prabhupada's will had not been released to the devotees at that time. It was kept in the safe for so many years. Once we saw Prabhupada's will after so many years, there is no such mention of the GBC as collective acharya. Prabhupada is referring to GBC as the ultimate managerial authority, not the ultimate authority or spiritual authority. Shrila Prabhupada is the authority. So they had all these different theories all along of what is a guru, of how and when they became gurus. Then other theories came up that Prabhupada told us to go to the Gaudiya Math, and other advisors are the gurus. That other advisors from the Gaudiya Math are actual gurus recommended by Prabhupada. Again, when we try to look for evidence of this, it's very slim. There's hardly any reference to Prabhupada ever advising us to go outside of his institution. As a matter of fact, in late December 1973, Prabhupada wrote a letter to myself and to Guru Kripa. There is no need whatsoever for outside instruction. So this idea, this other alternate theory that the outside advisors are gurus was not supported by Srila Prabhupada.
Now, coming back to the July 9th letter, have you had any interaction, any discussion with those original 11 or anyone very closely connected with that? What was their impression? Do you want to throw some more light on that historically?
Yeah. I was in Vrindavan at the time in July of 1977 because I was teaching in the Gurukul, and the Gurukul children were coming every day to sing kirtan in front of Prabhupada. And they were doing some seva in his room, cleaning the room, doing different service. So on the July 9th, the letter was written. On July 10th, I was the first devotee to see the letter. The secretary, Tamal Krishna Goswami, showed me Prabhupada's letter. And I will read from my testimony that I gave to the Vedic Village Review in 1990. Tamal Krishna, Yasoda, did you see this? Yasoda, no, what is it? TKG, this is signed by Prabhupada. He pointed out to Srila Prabhupada's signature in the left-hand bottom corner. I read the entire letter and then asked him, Yasoda, what does all this mean? TKG, devotees have been writing to Prabhupada asking for initiations, and now Prabhupada has named 11 ritviks who can initiate on his behalf. Prabhupada said that others can be added. Yasoda, and when Prabhupada departs, Tamal Krishna, there'll be ritviks. That's what Prabhupada said. It's all on tape. And I wrote here, someone may doubt my recall of the dates, times, and words spoken above. The reason I can report these events with accuracy is that I kept a journal, Prabhupada Memories notebook, as many were doing during this period, and after the conversation I noted down the above. This was actually written by me on the 10th of July on or about 9:25 a.m. in my Prabhupada diary. Now, when this testimony was produced in the Vedic Village Review in 1990, the leaders of ISKCON published a magazine called the ISKCON Journal, where Tamal Krishna denied that he had said that. The problem with that denial is that we know that in Topanga Canyon in 1980, on the 3rd of December, he already has admitted that Prabhupada never appointed any gurus. As a matter of fact, his own statement said, actually, Prabhupada never appointed any gurus. He did not appoint 11 gurus. He appointed 11 ritviks. He never appointed them gurus. Myself and the other GBCs have done the greatest disservice to this movement the last 3 years because we interpreted the appointment of ritviks as the appointment of gurus. And then there was all kinds of other nonsensical fabrications that they say the reason that I made all of this up because I wanted to be a guru, which is a falsehood. Prabhupada had just not given me the position or the service of teaching in a gurukul, which I was completely satisfied with. I just wanted to get to the bottom of a story of what Prabhupada said and how it was meant to apply. And I just wrote down what he told me. Now, people can accept whatever they wish from him, but we do know for a fact that over the years he's contradicted himself many times. Because in 1985, Tamal Krishna had a long-running exchange with a devotee in Chicago named Vaishnav Das, in which he actually admitted that people can be Prabhupada's disciples, that new persons can be Prabhupada's disciples. All of this is also on the internet. It's available there.
Now, coming once again to the 1977 days, it is said that some of the ISKCON leaders were ambitious, they were interested in power, control, and Srila Prabhupada was aware of that. Mm-hmm. Is that true? What is your understanding on that?
Well, Prabhupada, before 1977, there were different incidents at different times where devotees exhibited signs of immaturity and being somewhat precocious in their attempt to be gurus. There is recorded letters from Srila Prabhupada advising devotees not to take disciple, that their service would be stopped. The Prabhupada complained that one devotee had put his picture on the altar. Another time, one devotee in New Vrindavan advertised himself as a Shiksha Guru of New Vrindavan. There were also different attempts by devotees to occupy that position prematurely. So it is not that this just started in 1977. This immature idea of artificially becoming guru was there. In 1975, in late 1974, there was a meeting in Honolulu, Hawaii. I do not believe this was recorded. This was a BBT meeting where numerous persons were there: Kirtananda, Hamsadutta, Gopal Krishna, Jayadvaita, Guru Kripa, Balimardan. Many people were there. And this question was asked by Gopal Krishna Maharaj. Now, what about those people who called themselves Shiksha Gurus or Gurus? And Prabhupada was very grave, and he said, I know that some of you are trying to do this in my presence. And Prabhupada, at least during the time of my Guru Maharaj, his disciples had the decency to wait until he departed. But I know that some of you are doing this even in my presence. You should not do this. And then Prabhupada remained silent for a few seconds. And then he says, Guru means one who knows Krishna completely, perfectly. And then there was this chill in the room, complete chill. Because Prabhupada could detect that this tendency was there. It was there. And actually, sometimes people will ask, well, why would Prabhupada set up such a system? And the reason is to prevent what we've seen historically for the last 32 years. He did not want to see a repetition of the Gaudiya Math splinter that he saw in post-1936. He did not want neophytes or middle-class devotees artificially imitating the Mahabhagavat, because that has disastrous results.
Sometimes people say, Prabhupada did not give, it's not absolutely clear. It looks like Prabhupada left things little vague. On the other hand, we also see that Prabhupada was very concerned about his movement, and he gave many written directions, and he was very meticulous in the conduct of the organization. How do you see these two things?
If we look at the record, first of all, of how Prabhupada wrote his books, and the detailed and all the purports, the analyses, the various kind of quotations, it's very, very detailed. Prabhupada's books are detailed. He doesn't leave anything vague. He describes Krishna in full. He describes everything very clearly. And then the second point is how Prabhupada practically applied the management of his organization, ISKCON. Everything was well documented. Every major society-wide decision that Prabhupada made was put in writing. The creation of the BBT, the creation of the GBC, the formation of the direction of management, the system of the formula for ISKCON. So many times these letters would be written by his secretaries or GBCs. Prabhupada would approve them in the bottom. It's not that for example, the direction of management or Prabhupada's will, this was written by lawyers and Prabhupada signed it. But everything was precise, it was written, it was clear, it was very precise. So on this most important point, it's highly unlikely and highly illogical to suggest that the Prabhupada would leave everything vague. It is not consistent with the pattern of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of ISKCON. This would imply that Prabhupada actually would have given us more information of how to cook Goranga potatoes and sew flower garlands than this most important point, which most intelligent people do not accept. He did make everything clear. The question is, do they accept it? Are they willing to accept Prabhupada's instruction? Now, they say, yes, we accept, but this was only during the manifested physical presence of Prabhupada. So the question comes, when did he change this instruction? When did he amend this instruction? Did he issue a supplemental letter? Did he issue an amendment letter and he says, this will stop upon my physical disappearance? So far, no one has been able to establish any such document. Prabhupada has never issued, and there are statements after that letter, both by the secretary and conversations directly with Prabhupada. For example, on the 19th of July, when Prabhupada was talking about the preaching that was going on in Sri Lanka, in Colombo, by Hamsuddha Swami, he says, continue to become a ritvik and act on my charge. And every subsequent letter from the 9th of July to the 14th of November by the secretary just confirms that the initiations were only to be on Srila Prabhupada's behalf. In addition to that, there were two separate attempts by devotees to go to Srila Prabhupada and clarify it. In August, either late July or August, Guru Kripa Swami and Bhagavan Das went to Tamal Krishna. I was right beside them, and they asked them, let us go speak with Prabhupada. We want to speak with Prabhupada and try to get some clarification how this process of ritvik representatives will work. Tamal Krishna says, no, you cannot see Prabhupada. You cannot disturb him. Prabhupada is not well. And they insisted, no, this is important. It should get clarified. He says, no, you cannot see Prabhupada. And we do know that during the ritvik debate in 1990, Satsvarup wrote a paper in which he admitted that in October of 1977, Jayadvaita Swami went to try to go to Tamal Krishna to get it clarified. Again, Tamal Krishna says, you don't need any clarification. I know exactly what Prabhupada wanted. Then there's another whole line of argument that has come up recently in the Sampradaya Sun. On the 18th of October 1977, one Bengali gentleman came from New York. He wanted to be initiated by Srila Prabhupada, Mr. Chowdhury. And there's a recorded conversation where Prabhupada uses the word deputy 5 times, implying that they should just act in a capacity of officiating representative. In that conversation, Prabhupada says Jayapataka's name was on the list. Prabhupada is not referring to the appointment tape. He's referring to the July 9th letter. The letter he had written with the specific capacity of officiating representative. Then in that conversation, they mentioned, oh, Prabhupada says to initiate in this condition is not good. I've stopped initiation for the time being. So one line of argument, they say, oh, Prabhupada stopped the ritvik system. I say, no. Prabhupada did not stop being the Acharya. Prabhupada was on his bed, physically incapacitated. As a matter of fact, Prabhupada had not performed initiations for many, many months. The last known initiation in ISKCON where Prabhupada was involved was actually on May 29, 1977, when Bhakti Charu Swami, Bhakti Chaitanya Swami, and Prem Yogi Swami, and several Gurukul children took initiation from Prabhupada in the courtyard of the Krishna Balaram temple. But Prabhupada could not get up. He was in his room. He asked me to do the yajna for him and just to, explain. Prabhupada chanted on the beads. We brought the beads. He chose the names. So the idea that Prabhupada stopped, he already had stopped participating directly in the physical performance of the fire sacrifice, the physical, activity of the ritual. But he did not stop being the Acharya. Because on that same day, there was a letter from Tamal Krishna to Vasudeva Prabhu. This is on the 18th of October, 1977, where Tamal Krishna, the same day that those people who support their current system said that Prabhupada stopped giving initiation. But on the same day, the secretary is saying, if someone has agreed to follow the regulative principles and has been attending the temple for some time and chanting rounds, you can encourage them by giving initiation. You may send the names of such worthy persons to any one of the 11 devotees whom Srila Prabhupada has designated to initiate on his behalf. And after receiving the sanctified beads and new names, you can then perform the initiation ceremony. In this way, spread very vigorously this glorious movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and try to make Fiji the first Krishna conscious country in the world. Unquote. Plus, we do know, as we had discussed, that Prabhupada's books are very, very clear. If you look in Chaitanya Charitamrita, for example, in Adi Lila, when Prabhupada describes the conversation with Prakashananda Saraswati, some of these reports are extremely detailed. Prabhupada did not leave anything vague. It was very detailed. So when he is referring to the word deputy 5 times, if he actually wanted these people to be Diksha Gurus, why did he not say, I have appointed 11 Diksha Gurus who are going to be my successor, pure devotees, after I depart, you can accept them as Diksha Gurus in a He did not say that. He just reconfirmed the arrangement he had made in July by using the word on the list. His name was on the list. So this fallacious idea that Prabhupada had stopped being the initiating guru in October is completely wrong. It is not supported by the evidence of Prabhupada's statements by using the word deputy 5 times and everything he had done. Prabhupada left everything very clear. And on the 2nd of November, when an Indian gentleman asked him, oh, Prabhupada, we want an Indian to be the leader. Prabhupada, we have no such thing as Indian, European, or American. Anyone who follows, he can be the leader. This is the problem, is you do not want to follow. And then in Hindi, there's a small sentence, Prabhupada, only Lord Chaitanya can take my place. So if Prabhupada had already appointed a leader, or 11 leaders, why he did not say at that time? Why did not clearly say indirectly in answer to this question? Because any interpretation that people try to squeeze to try to prove an appointment or selection of Diksha Gurus is not supported by the written evidence or any of these conversations, or any of the series of letters that transpired after that 9th of July between the secretary and all these other devotees.
Have you had an opportunity to discuss the July 9th letter with any of the 11 who are named there? Did you know any of them closely?
The only person that I've discussed it with in depth was Hamsaduta, after he admitted that he came to the realization in 1993 that he had never been appointed as a guru, as a Diksha Guru Acharya, that he only been selected as a ritvik, and he apologized to all of his former disciples and recommended him to accept Prabhupada as their guru. And I've had considerable lengthy discussions with him, and he admitted that. Now, some people have criticized him, saying that he only did that because he wanted to be a guru in the name of Ritvik, but that is speculation also. I believe personally that he was sincere. He was sincere in recognizing his mistake and the impact it had on people's lives, on devotees' lives, and he tried to rectify it, and he still tries to rectify it by preaching and everything. As far as the other ones, we know that one of them has already admitted to Tamal Krishna. We do know that Rameswar Swami in July of 1979 also admitted that Prabhupada only nominated us as Ritviks in one of his discussions and papers that he wrote from Los Angeles at that time. The GBC will admit that Prabhupada chose us as Ritviks, but then they say, this is the contradiction. They say, after Prabhupada departed, they say, Prabhupada appointed us as Diksha Gurus. When we try to challenge the evidence, they say, oh, everyone can become a guru. But that's two different things. Prabhupada throughout his book said, yeah, everyone can become, if you're qualified. If you're actually qualified, then you can become. If Prabhupada could see that 1 or 11 or 111 was actually qualified to be Diksha Gurus or Acharya, why did not directly say? Where is that evidence where he said that?
At that time, maybe he found they were not qualified. Now they have become qualified, and the GBC, and they have an arrangement by which they get appointed.
So if they were so qualified, out of these 11, why is it that almost all of them fell down? And why is it that the few who did not fall down were involved in the biggest scandal in the history of ISKCON, of reinstating a homosexual pedophile as an acharya after they had actual evidence that he had been engaged in illicit activities? Where in the history of our sampradaya have we ever had so many grievous in scandalous fall downs in a such period of time. I mean, we have the Bhagavad Gita. We have the list of all these great acharyas that Prabhupada has given us. It's not like there's a big mystery. None of them have ever fallen down. In fact, it is the other way around. The acharyas will make a fallen person into a Vaishnava. But we have no such record as acharyas falling down again to become not Vaishnavas or demons. This is a fallacious idea. There is no record of such a thing. As far as this voting idea, how is it that the self-appointed will now appoint others? Although Prabhupada said others can be added, but in that capacity. Because the service was meant to be a service for the society. There's no question of proprietorship. The disease was, they thought, oh, now I've been given that function of initiating, so I need a picture, I need a title, I must have a special zone, I must have a special puja, I must have a special picture on the altar. But did Prabhupada tell you this? There's no such record. In 1978, when we presented evidence to them that you should not do this because this is against the Shastra, to take worship in front of your guru. They said, well, Prabhupada did it, we can do. But I said, are you Prabhupada? Can you sleep 2 hours a night? Can you produce a purport like Srimad Bhagavatam? Obviously they cannot. So to imitate is the result is what we have seen. Prabhupada warns us very clearly in the Nectar of Instruction. If one imitates the Mahabhagavat, eventually he becomes degraded. And history has shown this. It is not a point of accusing one individual or group of individuals. It's to see what has happened and learn from history.
What they say is that in ISKCON, in the beginning, yes, we made some mistakes. This is what they say, the other camp says. That about this guru, there were mistakes in the past, but now things are improving and progressively a better and better understanding about the position of a Diksha Guru is emerging. It's only some of these envious God brothers who are making a big issue out of this one. But otherwise, ISKCON is doing well and the understanding about Guru is gradually becoming better and it will become better in the future also. What do you have to say for this kind of arguments that we hear from the other camp?
Well, first of all, I can't speak for them. They have their idea, they have their, which is still evolving as we speak. The question is, where is it in the Shastra that gurus make mistakes? That's the first point. Especially those kind of mistakes. Because you're not talking about some minor mistake here. You're talking about major, major fall downs. And major apasidantas. First they had disappointment idea. Then they had everyone can become a guru idea. Then we have to go to other advisors besides Prabhupada idea. Then the GBC collective Acharya idea. Then they had the Acharya board idea, that we have an Acharya board that's going to vote in other gurus. Then they changed, okay, let's have a 2/3 collective vote of the GBC idea. Then they came up with this reinitiation concoction idea. And then ultimately they came up with this ultimate concoction that gurus becomes demons. This is in their own laws, their own GBC resolutions. So their so-called mistakes are very serious because they have misrepresented Prabhupada's teachings and Prabhupada's instructions. As far as this nonsense idea that, claiming that people are just envious, this is with the standard straw man argument. It's called argumentum ad hominem. When they cannot answer the actual substance of the argument, then they go in personal accusation. I've seen this also. Some people say, oh, Yasodanandana invented this. He fabricated all of this because he could not be a guru. Therefore, he's fabricated this and created all this trouble. He invented this. I said, this is all false. I never wanted to be a guru. But when they cannot answer the point, then they go into personal accusation. Did I write that letter, 9th of July? Did I make that statement when Prabhupada says, continue to become a ritvik and act on my charge? When Prabhupada said only Lord Chaitanya can be the leader, did I say that? When Prabhupada said deputy 5 times, did I say that? When Prabhupada said his name was on the list, did I say that? When Prabhupada says in the Upadesh Amrita that if you imitate the Mahabhagavat, eventually you'll become degraded, that is the warning. So any number of personal accusations and outlandish fabrications and accusations, that intelligent person will see through this. The issue is, what did Prabhupada say? Where, when, and how did Srila Prabhupada ever select these 11 as Diksha Gurus? That they cannot deal with. They cannot deal with this. Because the ultimate result of all this, they wrote in 1996, that some of our ISKCON gurus have had illicit sex with men, women, and possibly children as well. This is the end result of their so-called better understanding. We have progressed in this self-appointment system from our self-appointment to an Acharya board, to a two-third voting system, to our reinitiation. And then we came to the idea that gurus become demons, and then we have admitted that some of our gurus have illicit sex with women and children. That is the greatest insult to Prabhupada and Vedic teachings and the Vedic culture of India. Where have we ever seen in our sampradaya, or any of these sampradaya, Ramanuja sampradaya, Madhva sampradaya, Nimbarka, bona fide Vaishnava sampradaya, where gurus, bona fide gurus, have had illicit sex with men, women, and children? So there has been no better understanding. Your understanding is progressively becomes worse and worse. And we have seen, by talking to some of them are openly criticizing Srila Prabhupada, saying that Prabhupada made mistakes. One of these gurus has even written some so-called poetry. Entering the room, I see Prabhupada as ordinary in my unloving eyes. So this is their idea of a progressive, better understanding. The same person has written that I have doubts whether Krishna Lila is mythology. So this is their idea of progressive spiritual understanding. One of these gurus in Los Angeles, right in front of the temple, said that even Prabhupada could fall down. So this is their idea of so-called spiritual understanding. This is the result of disobeying the order of the spiritual master. Prabhupada left everything very clear, very simple, very concise. If we follow, it will progress very nicely. If we don't follow, then there's trouble. And when they say, oh, we follow the tradition. So where is the tradition for this concocted idea that this Jayadvaita Swami puts in his report in 1996 that some of our gurus have had illicit sex with men, women, and children? Any acharyas in our sampradaya have ever done this? As a matter of fact, we see the other way around. Prabhupada was once asked by a reporter, what about bad gurus? Prabhupada laughed. There is no such thing as a bad guru, any more than a white guru or a red guru. This is in the book, The Science of Self-Realization. And we see why, just like you have here on the wall. I was just reading. What happens when the spiritual master is not authorized? In the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada explains why these things happen. When someone becomes a spiritual master on his own authority, then there's problem. This is what we have seen. Because this idea to claim that we follow the tradition and simultaneously we've got all these problems, this has nothing to do with parampara. We see in our Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada dedicates his Bhagavad Gita to Baladevi Vidyabhushana, who wrote the Vedanta Sutra commentary in our Gaudiya Sampradaya called Govinda Bhashya. This Baladevi Vidyabhushana has written a little booklet called Pramaya Ratnavali, in which he explains the principles of Siddhanta for Gaudiya Sampradaya. In the first chapter, he explains what is this parampara. His Bhavati Vichintya Vidusha Niravakara Guru Parampara Nityam Ekantitvam Siddhyati Yayodayati Yena Haritosham. That this Guru Parampara is eternal. And all its members, one should meditate that they are Vidusha. They are faultless and Niravakara. There's no blemish. In other words, they are pure. This idea that they have, this so-called progressive understanding that the Acharya doesn't have to be a pure devotee, Prabhupada did not approve of this. They asked that during Prabhupada's lifetime, on a morning walk, they asked Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, we've heard that some devotee is preaching that the Acharya doesn't have to be a pure devotee. And Prabhupada said, who is that rascal? So that is the answer. Prabhupada did not approve of this. And then they try to give the example of Brahma running after his daughter. Prabhupada, this is the example given to be careful for the conditioned soul. Not that we think the Acharya is a conditioned soul. Then there's no understanding. We're being told by Shastra, Gurushu Naramati, Yasyabe Narakisa, in the Padma Purana, that if you think the Guru is an ordinary man, then you're a Naraki. You're destined for Naraka. So this progressive understanding they have is a regressive understanding. What they should do is say, we have not understood the first thing about Prabhupada's teachings regarding Guru. We've got it all wrong. And the proof is their conclusion. Their so-called Siddhanta, the proof that when they claim that gurus can become demons is not Siddhanta. It is Pratisiddhanta. It is Apasiddhanta. And they try to say, oh, Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Jiva Goswami and Nahari Thakur, they talk about how guru fell down. These acharyas fell down. Even here in South India, you have so many lines of these Ramanujas and Madhvas. Have they had one incident of a homosex guru? Of a child molester guru? Of an embezzler guru? Of an embezzler guru running after a 14-year-old girl? No. It doesn't happen. It has never happened. Because this is the position of the Acharya, Mahabhagavat. Because the whole understanding has been twisted to try to suit the political convenience. That is the disease.
We have heard that in the year 1972, April, there was an attempt by the GBC to centralize the control of ISKCON. And they had a meeting and they passed some resolutions. And Prabhupada heard about that and he was furious. He sent a series of telegrams. And then he sent a memo to all the temple presidents where he said, under these circumstances, I authorize you to disregard for the time being any decision from the GBC men until my further instruction. You manage your affairs peacefully and independently and try to improve the spiritual atmosphere of the centers more carefully. Finally, I beg to repeat that all GBC orders are suspended herewith by me until further notice. Can you throw a little more light on this? What was that decision that the GBC had made that had annoyed Srila Prabhupada so much?
Actually, it was not the entire GBC. It was just a few members who held a meeting which they never sent a proper notice to all the other GBC. They never sent a notice to Srila Prabhupada. They held some meetings and they decided to try to centralize the management of ISKCON. Basically a centralization attempt, like corporate management. When Prabhupada heard about it, he sent that letter, sent different telegrams, he suspended the entire GBC for some time. As a matter of fact, as part of this exchange of letters, there is one letter Prabhupada said, what will happen after I depart? Will the GBC spoil everything? Unquote. Prabhupada was very concerned about what had happened there. And we see that Prabhupada sent a whole list of letters, a whole series of letters to various GBCs in which he warned them that he did not want this centralized management for ISKCON. He wanted each temple to be independent, to be self-supporting, to take separate tax status and everything. This is well documented in so many letters to GBCs, to Karandar, who at that time was managing in LA. But that attempt was very displeasing to Srila Prabhupada. But again, for sake of clarification, it was not the entire GBC, but one or few members who held that. But Prabhupada rectified that immediately. Then, in 1974, the same attempt was made in Los Angeles by two other GBC. It was called the umbrella corporation idea. It was the same idea recycled again. They brought some lawyers and tried to explain to Prabhupada it would be better efficient management if we had an American or European style of corporate management with one corporation that would control all the centers, which was basically similar to what was attempted in 1972. Prabhupada again rejected the idea, and there were numerous letters to Karandar, who at that time was the manager in Los Angeles, the president, where Prabhupada completely discouraged this idea, did not want this idea introduced in ISKCON. So these ideas came up periodically, the attempt to centralize, the attempt to control everything from one individual center. That was done many times.
Prabhu, you were mentioning in 1972 and once again in 1974, an attempt was made for centralizing, and Prabhupada demolished that idea. He was totally against that. But then we see that Srila Prabhupada stating in India that this independent and self-supporting system is only for Western countries. And he wrote a letter where he states in 1972 of May 24th to Giriraj, so far the temples in India are concerned, the independent and self-supporting method does not apply in India. In India, Bombay is the headquarters, and all other centers shall send their funds for centralizing in Bombay. In return, you shall supply everyone with enough books, and you shall pay construction bills as required by them. Do you see that? Was Srila Prabhupada having a different idea for India, or was there a change in his mind? Why do you see this kind of an apparent contradiction?
Actually, when we look at any issue with Srila Prabhupada, whether it's a management issue, initiation issue, guru issue, or any issue, we have to look at all the evidence and all the statements Prabhupada made in context in all the different statements, not just one statement in isolation. Because on this issue, Prabhupada wrote also many different instructions about India and the management. Because in the beginning, when we came to India in 1970, Prabhupada took that registration in Bombay with the Maharashtra government, and he wanted things to be done in a systematic way, because Prabhupada was obviously aware of the culture in India and the necessity to keep proper accounts and everything. He did not want to lose that registration over some technicality. So he gave that first instruction. But there are other instructions Prabhupada subsequently gave about this. It is not a fact, definitely not a fact, that Prabhupada gave that all registrations for Indian centers in the future should only be done out of Bombay. Because there are other letters that Prabhupada sent after that time. That letter you're referring to is on the 24th of May, 1972, where we see that on the 22nd December, 1972, Prabhupada wrote to Karandar, and he's explaining how his plan has actually changed. He says, regarding your points about taxation, corporate status, etc., I've heard from Jayatirtha you want to make big plan for centralization of management, taxes, monies, corporate status, bookkeeping, credit, like that. I do not at all approve of such plan. Do not centralize anything. Each temple must remain independent and self-sufficient. That was my plan from the very beginning. Why you are thinking otherwise? Once before you wanted to do something centralizing with your GBC meeting, and if I did not interfere, the whole thing would have been killed. Do not think in this way of big corporation, big credit, centralization. These are all nonsense proposals. And Prabhupada went on and on and on. Then we see that Srila Prabhupada, on October 30th, 1974, wrote a letter to whom it may concern. This has Srila Prabhupada's signature. It has Srila Prabhupada's letterhead, very clear. This is regards to registration in India. Prabhupada states very clearly, to whom it may concern. As the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, I authorize that the society may incorporate under the Religious Societies Act of 1860 separately in West Bengal as the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, parenthesis Calcutta, with myself as founder Acharya. I also appoint the following as the trustees: Gargamuni Swami, Bhavananda Goswami, and Jayapataka Swami. Dated this 30th of October, 1974, signed A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. So this preposterous idea that Prabhupada wanted each and every center forever in India to be tied to the ISKCON Bombay is actually refuted by Srila Prabhupada himself with this request here. This is very clear. As far as those who may see, well, I've never seen that letter. Well, that letter is actually documented by the Bhaktivedanta Archives. On June 16, 2008, they have given a certificate of authenticity where everything is very clear. It is actually a bona fide letter, duly signed and executed by Srila Prabhupada. Then somebody may say, well, that letter may not have been received. But Prabhupada, in November 17, 1974, wrote again on his letterhead, as the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, he says, draft of additions to Memorandum of Association for Calcutta registration. Number 5B, there shall be a governing body commission whose purpose is to act as the instrument for the execution of the will of the founder Acharya, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The GBC members will be initially selected by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. It will oversee all operations and management of ISKCON as it receives direction from Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada has the final approval in all matters. Then it gives a list of several items that Prabhupada wanted: to perform extensive research work in Sanskrit, to promote Vedic research work in the area of agriculture, to perform research work in the ancient Vedic educational schemes such as Gurukul. This again is also confirmed by the Bhaktivinoda archives. So this idea that has been advanced here is actually not supported by the actual evidence of Srila Prabhupada letter. And I would like to add also, with regards to South India, I came to South India in 1972 along with Guru Kripa Swami at the time and several devotees. When we went back to Vrindavan in the October of 1972, Srila Prabhupada was giving the Nectar of Devotion lectures, a series of lectures specifically on the Nectar of Devotion of Rupa Goswami. This was done at the Samadhi of Rupa Goswami in the courtyard of just outside the courtyard of the Radha Damodar temple in Vrindavan, Mathura. After we had come back, Prabhupada mentioned that he would give Guru Kripa Sannyas. So on one occasion, everybody had left the room. I asked Srila Prabhupada for Bangalore, because he asked me, how do you do this preaching there? Because we were collecting in Bangalore to build the Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan. Prabhupada, how do you do the preaching there? What do you do? So I explained, we go to Rotary Club, Lions Club, Chamber of Commerce. We meet different gentlemen. We offer them your books. At that time, the life membership was 1,111 rupees. And people participate. But Prabhupada, everyone is asking, when will you open a center in Bangalore? There are many influential people who say, we will help. You come here, we will help. More, because we want something here. Prabhupada said, yes, Bangalore is a very important center. You can open a center there, and eventually we will take registration, separate registration there.
He said that?
He said that exactly to me. In 1976, when we opened the Radha Madan Mohan temple in Hyderabad, we had invited, because the local people we had heard would not accept the temple unless they had local Brahmins. They say, you Westerners, if you do this, it will not be a bona fide temple. So Prabhupada said, okay. So we invited 12 Sri Vaishnava Brahmins, a few of them here from Bangalore, Sampat Kumar Bhattacharya's brother, Brahmins from Mysore, Ahobilam Srirangam. They came there and did this very nice ceremony. They also received Prabhupada there, did Guru Puja, and they did this nice Pran Pratishta, Abhishek, everything. And when everything was over, Prabhupada's secretary came to me and said, Prabhupada wants to speak with you. So I thought maybe I will get chastised, something may have been wrong. So I came, Prabhupada, did I do anything wrong? Prabhupada said, no. He says, this was very nice. So you try to arrange for preaching in South India. You go and help to spread Varnashram Dharma to all these people and make Bangalore the center for preaching throughout the whole South India. He says, because Bangalore is commercial capital, geographical, central location. And again, he said, you take registration there. Take separate registration. Then this Sampat Kumar Bhattacharya, who is no more, he had a conversation with Prabhupada in Sanskrit and Hindi. Afterwards, I asked him, what did you were discussing? Because the name Bangalore kept coming up. I understood a little Hindi, but not perfectly. He says, your guru wants to open branch in Bangalore. He said to take separate registration there. He says, this is an important place, you should open branch. So Prabhupada did want that this Bangalore should be the center for preaching, not just for Bangalore, but for the whole of South India.
That is exactly what we are saying. Prabhupada wanted a branch to be opened in Bangalore, not an independent center. And that is what ISKCON Bombay is saying.
Prabhupada's idea was different. He said, open a center, that will be the major center for the whole South India, the center for all the preaching in South India, and you take registration there. Why would he mention that on two separate occasions to take registration there in Karnataka? Also, this one devotee, Shankarbrit. Shankarbrit was made a devotee when Achyutananda Swami and myself were preaching in Bangalore in 1975. Where did he get the idea to go register here at the Karnataka Societies Act? Because he knew that instruction Prabhupada had given in Hyderabad in 1976. He had this center on Hare Krishna Road. He got some government building donated, along with working with other devotees. So at that time in ISKCON, a brahmachari would not go by himself and take registration from a government. He'd receive instruction from the GBC at that time, because they knew that Prabhupada wanted this. And this interpretation they have, that there can be no other branch in India but just Bombay, is counteracted by Prabhupada's own statement regarding Calcutta.
So your memory is very clear on these two things.
Yes.
That Prabhupada said.
Yes.
About taking a separate registration in Bangalore.
Yes, definitely.
It's not anything vague.
It is not vague, it is unimprecise, and not ambiguous, it's very clear.
Thank you.
Because along with that instruction, Prabhupada also told me, you go there and preach. It was two instructions. And then, not only that, but Prabhupada also confirmed that instruction with because these Brahmins, they came there, and they told me before, well, we're going to do the sacrifice, but we want to ask your Guru, Prabhupada, to open branch there. Because you're collecting money in Bangalore, bringing it to Vrindavan. And they said, why not collect money in Bangalore, keep in Bangalore, flourish in Bangalore, and have a center there? And Prabhupada wanted that.
What do you have to say about the efforts that are being made here in Bangalore by Madhu Pandit Prabhu and other devotees, putting up this struggle? ISKCON Mumbai has always described this as it's just a power struggle. It's a mundane power struggle by Madhu Pandit Das to consolidate his power, and that is why he has taken up the issue of ritviks, and it's all he and his family who wants to control this, and innumerable things like that is being allegations and character assassinations being made. What do you have to say about that?
This is a standard pattern that we've seen over the years. Whenever anybody has either protested, or not even protested, asked questions about their system and their original claim of appointment, they're subject to a tidal wave of accusations, slanders, fabrication, falsehoods, half-truths, innuendos. I have personally witnessed that. I've seen that. I've seen other devotees who have suffered that. And it is just a repeat of what has happened. During Prabhupada's time, in 1973, we went in America to collect money after 1972 when we came to Bangalore. In 1973, we went to America to collect money for the Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan. So we had gone to the Northeast USA to collect money in different areas. And because we were trying to collect in a short amount of time, we did not stop at all the centers, the ISKCON centers. So later on, when we saw Prabhupada on the 31st of December 1973 in Los Angeles, is we brought him the money. We had collected $65,000 in about 60 days, about 65 days. So we brought the money to Prabhupada, and then Prabhupada, when we came to him, he says, oh, I've heard a lot about you too, Guru Kripa and myself. He says, I've heard a lot of complaints about you too. So Prabhupada, what did we do wrong? What was the problem? Oh, no, nothing wrong. You went and collected this money. I wanted so many of my disciples to help with constructing this temple in Vrindavan, Krishna Balaram temple, but very few have helped. You have gotten the money, and they came to me, protested. So many GBC's temple presidents. They became envious of you. He says, do not worry. I had the same problem with my godbrothers. I came to your country. I spread this movement open, they criticize. He says, as soon as you don't do something successful or wonderful, some people will become envious and criticize. So Prabhupada said that. Then we complained about one particular devotee, a GBC, who had made so many accusations, slander and accusations. We said, we have a problem with this individual. And Prabhupada said, yes, I have noticed, he is not a Vaishnava. He is not a Vaishnava. And Prabhupada quoted, Gopi Bharatuhu Padakamalayo Dasa Dasa Anudasa. Prabhupada, this is Vaishnava. Vaishnava doesn't mean that you try to be number one and trying to control everybody else. That is not Vaishnava. Vaishnava means servant of the servant of the servant. So Prabhupada was aware of what was going on. Even in 1972, this was discussed by Prabhupada in one letter. There was some discussion, some friction amongst some GBCs. Some person claiming this is my zone, this is his zone. Prabhupada says, we have no such thing as my zone, this zone. That is material designation. This was in a letter to Jagadish. So this idea that this is my zone, this is this center zone, everything belongs to Krishna, first of all. And because you have been successful, the same phenomena is there. Some criticism, some envious criticism and everything. Prabhupada is even warned about this. We see in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada is describing in the Madhya Lila, he's describing this exact phenomena, this resentfulness, this jealousy. Prabhupada says in the Madhya Lila, chapter 1, text 220, in accordance with the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the two brothers Rupa and Sanatan immediately touched the lotus feet of these Vaishnavas, who all became very happy and congratulated the two brothers for having received the mercy of the Lord. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. This behavior is indicative of real Vaishnavas. When they saw that Rupa and Sanatan were fortunate enough to receive the mercy of the Lord, they were so pleased that they all congratulated the two brothers. A jealous person in the dress of a Vaishnava is not at all happy to see the success of another Vaishnava in receiving the Lord's mercy. Unfortunately, in this age of Kali, there are many mundane persons in the dress of Vaishnavas. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has described them as disciples of Kali. He says Kali Chela. He indicates that there is another Vaishnava, a pseudo-Vaishnava with tilak on his nose and kunti beads around his neck. Such a pseudo-Vaishnava associates with money and women and is jealous of successful Vaishnavas. Although passing for a Vaishnava, his only business is earning money in the dress of a Vaishnava. Bhaktivinoda Thakur therefore says that such a pseudo-Vaishnava is not a Vaishnava at all, but a disciple of Kali Yuga. A disciple of Kali cannot become an acharya by the decision of some high court. A Vaishnava acharya is self-effulgent, and there is no need for any court judgment. A false acharya may try to override a Vaishnava by a high court decision, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that he is nothing but a disciple of Kali Yuga. So all of these accusations and slander and innuendos and fabrications that we're seeing is just a symptom of envy and jealousy. Because your center is successful. Today we're seeing for Vaikuntha Ekadasi, more than 1 lakh of people, 100,000 people come to see the Lord. They're buying books, getting prasadam, seeing the deity. So many devotees are being made. So much prasad distribution is taking place to the Akshaya Patra program. But some people are not happy. They want to resort to the court to override. So Prabhupada is given warning there. He's very clearly given warning. We can read and get a hint. Is Prabhupada pleased with this high court litigation on the part of some individuals who are harassing ИСККОN Bangalore? And all this preposterous claim that, oh, everything should be under this centralized corporate management, we've already seen. Prabhupada says no. No corporate centralization. Prabhupada has already said in 1972, in 1976, establish a center here. Take separate registration. So ultimately, we have to leave it to Krishna. Krishna is in charge. But this idea of jealous persons who will harass, that will not stop. That will always be there. Neophytes, Prabhupada says in the Srimad Bhagavatam in one purport, actually neophytes are invariably envious because of less advancement. That is because of desire for name, fame, and pratishtha. To become Vaishnava, nidmatsaram, to become free from envy. So what we're seeing, all these fabrications, these lies, and accusations, and innuendos, this is just a symptom of envy, jealousy. I personally experienced this. I know.
What is your message for the devotees of ISKCON Bangalore?
Same message Prabhupada gave us all along. Chant Hare Krishna, your life will be sublime. Follow Prabhupada's instructions and everything will be nice.
And in the context of the ongoing dispute?
All we can do is rely on Krishna. All we can rely on Krishna. Krishna will decide. Krishna has his own idea. Krishna knows. He's in the heart of every living being, including those who are adversaries or inimical. He knows. Because we can see practically, this is the most successful temple in all of ISKCON worldwide. The most book distribution, the most prasadam distribution, the most devotees being made, first-class devotees, highly educated, highly trained, intelligent people. This is not the rickshaw wallet class here. This is not the rice bowl sampradaya class here. You see, there are two sampradayas. There's the Rupanuga Sampradaya, those who correctly follow the Rupanuga Sampradaya according to Prabhupada. And then there's another Sampradaya, the Rupinuga Sampradaya. They follow the rupee, the dollar, the money. They want the money. They want the follow for the money. So we have to follow the Rupanuga Sampradaya. And that is going on here. That is going on nicely here. If they say, oh, you are biased. No, no. You come and see for yourself. Just yesterday, I'm speaking to one devotee. He's a PhD in medical. He could easily earn money. He could make very good living, teach in college or work in hospital, have his own practice. But he's choosing here. I asked him, why? Why you're doing this? He says, because I read Prabhupada's books and I'm convinced Prabhupada is the Acharya. Is how? It's because he's living through his books. Prabhupada said so. Says, what we have heard from the spiritual master, that is living. This is in 1969 on 13th of January. In the Bhagavatam, we see Prabhupada is giving. He lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. Not that Guru is dead and now I'm big Guru. Prabhupada did not approve this idea. Prabhupada has given so many hints how we're perceiving the eternal presence of Guru. In 1979, we had one of these individuals who, now that Prabhupada is dead, he was saying, it is no longer practical to accept Prabhupada as Guru. It's not accepting reality. Unquote. I say, you've never understood anything from Prabhupada. Prabhupada never preached this idea of my Guru is dead and gone. We can read. Prabhupada was trying to prevent this insidious idea from infiltrating into his society. That's why he established that system, this ritvik system. Because we see practically, the devotees are being trained, they're prospering, and all over the world many people are picking it up. Because this was Prabhupada's desire, this was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's desire. Otherwise, Prabhupada would have made it clear, whoever issued another letter, have appointed such and such individuals, he would have solved the issue. And if people say it's not clear, well, that's your problem. If you do not accept Prabhupada's statement, that is your problem. That is the tradition. The only tradition we know is to follow the order of the spiritual master. Without following the order of the spiritual master, you have no tradition, no parampara, nothing. Then what you have is a lagu parampara. Not a guru parampara, but a lagu parampara. Lagu means light. All with all kinds of deviated ideas. So the only message is to follow Prabhupada, chant, listen to his tapes, listen to his books, and welcome him to our lives and surrender to his instruction. Then everything will be nice. The whole ISKCON can be revitalized. Everything can be revitalized. Eventually it will be revitalized around this idea. And all these apasidantic ideas will be, they are being rejected right now by so many people. So many people. So that is the message. That is Prabhupada's message. Not that I'm trying to give something. And for those who do not like and they want to say, oh, he's just made this up. No, I did not. The letter is right here. Prabhupada wrote the letter. I did not write the letter. We have no quarrel with them. Nobody. We say, just follow Prabhupada. They're not happy. Okay, so we follow Prabhupada. If someone has deviated, doesn't mean that everybody has to deviate. This person can be corrected and follow again. But acharyas have never deviated. You will not find this idea that acharyas deviate nowhere in Vaishnava culture. That is nowhere in Vaishnava tradition. Prabhupada did not teach this. What he taught is these acharyas are pure, they're mukta purusha, mahabhagavatas, pure devotees, and our only business, tandera charana sevi bhakta sanevas, janame janemo e abhilas. Our only desire, or abhilas, is to follow in the footsteps of these great acharyas. Then we reach the supreme perfection of life. Das, 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 anudas. That is our perfection.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.